Well, yeah, because it takes too long.
I will be right.
All right, Denise, back to work. So Pete, here's my suggestion.
Yes, sir.
I think we'll just have them come up, do their opening statement back to back,
Okay.
and then I'm just gonna wait for your feedback. I gave him my suspect brilliance last week. See if it makes a difference, but, so we have, get to hear Vincent twice.
So is he going first to last, or?
We'll just go Kent versus Bonds, and we'll go Victor and Vincent, and then we'll do State versus Gifford, which is Vincent and Bob. I will leave it up to you, but I think we should do two and then take a break and then do two and take a break.
Absolutely.
So as soon as we get Victor and Jeremy good. And then, I mean, the only other piece of business we have to conduct tonight is what the hell are we doing next week since we messed up our schedule?
Well, unfortunately, I checked last year, we sent out the mock trial packet on September 20th.
Well,
So I don't know if we just haven't received it yet.
Well, I think, Sam, there's some issue with Amistad because of the principal not getting hold of them and all that.
Okay.
So I'm gonna get it. I can get it from Sam Stone and I can get it forwarded so we can have it next week.
Okay, if we can have it, then maybe next week we'll come in and we'll do lecture on witness examinations. And then set up the week after, we'll set up assignments.
Perfect. All right.
So the reading for this week is gonna be due next week?
Yes.
Yeah.
On,
I think it's worth doing this over again to just see.
But it's been a good maturity in my time reading the 200 pages.
Fine, come in, here. So. We will have, Victor and Vincent do Kent versus Bond.
okay. Plaintiff, the floor is yours.
Theater Jeffrey Kent, a firefighter, one of our nation's heroes, whose only purpose in life was to be a firefighter, has had his life's purpose stripped away and is asking for your help. It was a beautiful, warm day in Silverado. Jeffrey had rented a Rock Industries jackhammer from Bond's rental in order to help his recently widowed mother repair her driveway. While sipping a beer on this warm day, he was going to surprise his mother while she was out. The driveway would have been cleared by the time she got home. All that would be left to do was to call the contractors to come in and pour the new one. But the real surprise came 45 minutes later into working on this driveway when the jackhammer jumped and landed on Jeffrey's foot, severing his big toe and the two adjacent toes. Little did he know that this jackhammer when this particular jackhammer hits a hard rock, it will jump and the operator will lose control. This was not the first occurrence of this type of incident happening. Rock Industries, the manufacturer of the jackhammer, was aware of this potential problem. It has happened to at least 3 potential professional contractors already. One of the professional contractors even had the exact same jackhammer hit a rock, jump up, and hit his foot as well. Rock Industries goes through great lengths to inform all purchasers of its equipment of anything they need to watch out for. It has every company that rents out Rock Industries equipment agree to explain to everyone, regardless of experience level, how to operate the equipment safely. Bond Rentals did not do that in this case. They let Jeffrey walk out with an industrial jackhammer without explicitly warning him that this particular model was prone to jumping, and now his toes are gone. Not only did Jeffrey lose his toes, Jeffrey also lost his purpose in life. Jeffrey now has to retire on disability because his lack of toes has affected his balance, rendering him unable to perform his duties as a firefighter. Unfortunately, The injuries did not happen on the job, and Jeffrey is unable to recover workers' compensation and has now turned to us. The defense will argue that Jeffrey was intoxicated after just one beer. They will argue that drinking this one beer would somehow get him intoxicated enough to have Jeffrey be at fault for this jackhammer jumping. The defense will argue that Jeffrey was not a professional contractor or a construction worker, should have been aware of the safety gear he would need to operate this industrial-grade jackhammer. I will argue with facts and evidence that Bonds Rental went against its agreement with Rock Industries to warn everyone, regardless of experience level, of the dangers involved in using this particular jackhammer, causing Jeffrey to lose his toes, his job, and his purpose. Jeffrey is unable to work, has no other source of income, he lives in constant pain, and has lost the ability to do the only things he ever wanted to do. At the conclusion of this trial, I will ask you to enter a judgment against the defendant and to award Jeffrey just compensation to make him whole again. Thank you.
Guilty.
Hey.
And now, Mr. Spardell, would you care to make an opening statement, sir?
You guys gonna give me feedback first or no?
No.
Okay.
After the two.
As plaintiff's counsel has stated, this is in fact an unfortunate accident. However, it was one that could have been easily avoided had the plaintiff heeded the warnings he was given and took the necessary safety steps requested of him, both in his signed rental agreement and the safety manual that was provided to him. The events of this matter start on December 15th of 2016. The plaintiff came to Bond's rental store and asked for an industrial grade jackhammer and stated that he needed to help his mother chip out her old driveway. Mr. Bonds, wanting to make sure that he understood the needs of his customer, asked him if he had ever used such a power tool before. The plaintiff's response was an unqualified yes. Mr. Bonds then suggested the one and only industrial jackhammer that they offered, and Mr. Bonds did his due diligence by first filling out the appropriate rental agreement and then by asking the plaintiff to look through the safety manual as he filled out the safety agreement. The rental agreement will show that the plaintiff was warned that he should wear proper safety clothing and that he should not drink alcohol while operating the jackhammer. Further, in this case, if the plaintiff was unsure about what exactly safety apparel was, the safety manual laid out exactly what he should be wearing when using the jackhammer. It pointed out that he should be wearing gloves, goggles, long sleeve shirt, and steel-toed boots. Chris Bonds will testify that he tried to go over the safety requirements with Mr. Kent, but that he appeared distracted and not particularly interested in what he had to say. The plaintiff then, as plaintiff's counsel stated, went home, had lunch at his mother's house, changed his clothes, and started his task. The plaintiff's own testimony will show that he did not change into the suggested safety equipment that was in the safety manual. Instead, he changed into a short sleeve shirt, shorts, and an old, worn-out pair of tennis shoes. He states that he did this because it was a hot and sunny day in Silverado. He also states that because there was nothing else to drink in his mother's house, that he decided to drink a beer while doing such. At this point, plaintiff has already disregarded two of the explicit safety instructions given to him, both in the rental agreement and in the safety manual. Plaintiff's counsel wants you to believe that all was going well with Mr. Ken as he was doing this to his mother's driveway, and that he had no notice that a jackhammer may jump. In fact, the plaintiff will state that the jackhammer had jumped multiple times before he unfortunately lost his toes. The plaintiff will also tell you that although the jackhammer had jumped before, he still did not change into steel-toed boots as the safety manual and his rental agreement advised him that he should. Also, as plaintiff's counsel has stated, Rock Industries and therefore its rental agency, Bond Rentals, knew previously that their jackhammers could jump when hitting hard surfaces. I am not here to hide the ball with you, ladies and gentlemen. We admit that Rock Industries did in fact know of this issue. However, the evidence will show that Rock Industries safety team tried to recreate these jumping actions that were instructed to them that had happened. The facts will show that the safety team could not duplicate these results, but in their due diligence and for the safety and concern of their future customers, they sent memos out to everybody who had bought one of these jackhammers and instructed them that an occurrence had happened, but that they could not replicate it. And these memos stress that everybody who wears these, that operates these kinds of power tools should be wearing the proper safety attire as outlined in the safety manual and in the rental agreement. The facts will also show that the second occurrence of a jackhammer jumping was with a licensed construction worker who was wearing steel-toed boots. When the jackhammer jumped on his toe, as plaintiff's counsel stated, it did land on his toes. However, like plaintiff's counsel seems to have left out, he was wearing steel-toed boots and his toes were fine after the incident. He did not lose his career and he did not suffer any kind of injury. I'm not here to tell you that Mr. Bonds did not have an obligation to warn customers that there are dangers associated with such a powerful machine. I'm here to prove to you that he did warn him. Chris Bonds had the plaintiff review the safety manual, which contained a warning. While the plaintiff was reading the safety manual, Chris Bonds filled out the rental agreement. He had the plaintiff initial and sign the rental agreement next to another warning. Finally, Mr. Bonds tried to give him a verbal warning about the jackhammer, which plaintiff couldn't be bothered to listen to. I strongly believe that by the end of this case, you will know that Mr. Bonds did in fact warn the plaintiff, and that it was the plaintiff's own disregard for those warnings that led to this unfortunate accident. Thank you.
Okay. Victor, let's start with you first. I know, right, clearly you guys haven't spent the amount of time that all of our experts just told you to spend with your facts to get up there and deliver without looking. So I'm going to just know that when you're in front of the jury, you know, spend time with it and try to be able to deliver without looking so much. You said that you were going to be asking them for their help. I wouldn't. You don't want to, that'll draw an objection that you're trying to get the jury to advocate for your side when they haven't even heard the evidence yet. Okay? So, you know, be careful about doing that. I liked, kind of, you started out, he lost his purpose for life. Okay, I wrote that down. You didn't tell us what it was. Then you came back later and you said he lost his purpose for life. And you didn't really give it to us. About 2 sentences later, you said he could no longer work as a firefighter, right? And that when you came back to it that second time, I would have just hit it. He lost his purpose in life, and that was serving his community and helping his fellow citizens in capacity as a firefighter, or however you wanted to word it. But I would have definitely made a point of stressing what his purpose was when you came back to it the second time. And I like that you start with it. You did come back to it, but you didn't slam it home when you got there. Defense will argue. Stay away from that. I wouldn't say defense is going to argue. You're going to say, well, evidence might show, and discuss what the defense evidence is going to be, right? The defense, right? gonna show X, okay? But that's not the complete picture, that's not the whole picture. You know, the evidence is going to show, you know, that they're responsible, that their negligence in warning has led to my client's losing his toes. I would have liked to have seen a cleaner dismount. You know, it's it was fine. I mean, you told them what you wanted, which is good, but I would have liked to have seen you just have a little more emotion when you get to it, and really slam that home. Okay, what it is you're asking for, and you got the emotional side, right? You got a guy who's lost his parts of his body. He's lost his ability to be physically active. He's lost his ability to do the job that he loved, that he dreamed of doing his whole life. You have the ability to really tie an emotional aspect into your dismount. But content was good. I like that you didn't rely on this witness will say that, this witness will say this, and you didn't really. I think you may have said once or twice that, you know, the evidence will show, and that's fine to throw it in like that, but every statement wasn't, well, the evidence will show this, and then the evidence will show that. And this
It was like that last week.
so you cleaned it up, and I like that. So, Mr. Victor?
So let me just, I don't know that you guys know this, let me just for 2 minutes just tell you, I worked for the DA's office for 24 years. And of those 24 years, 15, 20 of them I spent in victim services, handling cases on the victim end, you know, coordinating witnesses. So I watched hundreds of opening statements. So my coming to it is a little different than theirs. So sitting in the audience, I always expected the attorneys to do their stuff. What I paid attention to, and kind of maybe unfairly, because I don't know how long you've had time, you know, how long you've had to prepare. I'm looking for how strong your voice is, how often you're not relying on your notes, and kind of the confidence that you have. So Victor, for you, and I'm going off of what Professor Nolan said, you didn't have a lot of time. I saw that you did rely a lot on your notes, and your voice, you're soft-spoken. So for me, unfair as it is, I'm the 13th juror. I used to tell DAs all the time, I'm the 13th juror. I would say, you're not sounding very confident. You need to speak a little louder. That's what I'm going to offer to you, because that's pretty much all I can offer. They'll offer the contents of the stuff. So.
That's it. I hate to give this to you, but very nice job. I liked almost everything, and we'll get to it. Your energy was good. You seemed more comfortable with your facts. You knew it. You addressed pros and cons. Victor, I wanted you just to note what he did in his. He said the plaintiff's own testimony will be this. The plaintiff's own witnesses will be this. He didn't say the plaintiffs will argue this. And that's exactly how you want to attack that. You want to attack the other side. Their evidence is going to be this. Their witnesses are going to say that, right? Don't say they're going to argue that. And I liked how you addressed everything. I thought you had a good case. You had a good tone. Voice was projecting. You got into Rock Industries. You didn't really explain the connection with Rock Industries, which is fine. If you don't know the facts, you might be saying, well, wait a second, I thought you were Bond Rentals, and now we've got Mr. Kent, we got Bond's Rock Industries, how's this Rock Industries? You did a good job addressing that aspect of it. We know the facts because we've done this case so much. So I thought you did a good job with that. The one thing I didn't like, plaintiff seems to have left this out. Don't go there.
Don't go there.
If you don't want to go there, just saying the plaintiff left this out, but you actually called him out. right? You said plaintiff's counsel, you know, seeing that, right? Yeah, you never want to do that. And I like you just now. I like that you said, at the end of this, you're going to see that we've done everything we were supposed to do, and we're not responsible. Period. I thought you did a really nice job.
I'm gonna have to echo, I believed you. You were very confident, you made a lot of eye contact, good delivered.
John, what did you pick up that was different than last week?
Is better organized and not as long. You was really a lot longer last time. This one was 6
I tried to fit everything in last time.
Everything that you knew about the case on both sides. So
Both of your time was that excellent, I thought.
Victor was about 4 minutes and Vincent was about 6 minutes. But both of them were in the realm of easy to listen to. You're not gonna have your mind wander with that short. It's hard, you know, when we talk about 10 minutes seems like nothing, and it's a long time to talk to a jury on an opening statement. So I think you improved, and that's what we're always looking for. What happened last week and what have you done to improve? And I think you improved definitely. I think Victor's improved as well. I mean, you're still sweating, Victor. I don't know what we're gonna do about
Yeah, that's
that.
amazing. First.
Yeah, yeah. You could just get it. It's right next to the deodorant in like any store. It's full of cream. It's like the, yeah.
If it makes you feel any better, mine's prescription deodorant, so.
That's just weird.
No, I can't help it.
All right, so
And the one thing you're gonna get is confidence through experience, right? The more you do this, the more you stand up and deliver opening statements, and it may take it 10, 15, 20 times, but at some point, maybe I get this, I feel comfortable up here. And everything changes once you get there. Once you just feel comfortable up there, the voice tone will change, the confidence level, you'll look confident, you'll project better, because it's there, you feel it.
and the one drawback is you don't have the benefit of actually having the whole case before you do this. But always, my view is you get your facts, you get your jury instructions, you get your closing argument organized, and then you produce your opening statement because you want to lead to that. And the opening statement is very close to a mirror image of the closing argument. You just throw in the inferences and stuff in the closing, but the organizational pattern and what you're pushing, what you're selling to the jury ought to be very much the same in your opening statement, what you do in direct and cross-examination, what you did in voir dire, and what you do in the closing argument. So I think both of you improved, and that's what we're looking for. So now Vincent can give his opening statement as a plaintiff.
That's the prosecution.
Yeah, the prosecution.
I'm sure many of you have heard, hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, but we seldom think of the opposite, that hell hath no fury like a man scorned. But I'm here to tell you that Donna Kevins has experienced this saying in bright, living color. On Saturday, October 5th, she decided to go to a bar with some of her friends without a thought of the defendant. On her way home, Donna saw a black Mercedes pull up next to her. She looked over and noticed that this person was trying to roll down her window. She also noticed, to her surprise, that the driver of this Mercedes was the defendant, her coworker, and her ex-lover. She noticed that the defendant could not roll down his window because he could not figure out how. Donna will testify that she believes this was because he was drunk. Instead of giving up on this futile attempt, he instead winked at Donna. After the wink, the light turned green. The defendant stepped on the gas, lost control of his vehicle, swerved into Donna's car, and ran her off the road. Did the defendant do what a normal, reasonable person would do in this instance? Pull over, ask if she was okay, get their information, give them his information? No. Instead, he looked over, flipped her the bird, and drove off. Donna, doing what any person in an accident would do, called 911 immediately She was shaken, confused, and scared because she had just been in an accident. She then went home, composed herself, and called 911 back to let them know that she had just called to report an accident and that she knew who the perpetrator was that ran her off the road. Officer Sam Jackson was the one who responded to this call. He will testify that he showed up at the defendant's house at 10 o'clock at night, an hour after the accident happened. He observed the defendant's car at the end of their driveway, parked skewed in the street, but still cool. As he was investigating the car, the defendant decides to come out of his house with a martini in his hand. He comes up to the officer, and the officer explains to them that he's investigating a hit and run that had happened that night and wanted to know what the defendant was doing. The defendant gave him his story, and when the officer pressed him more, he decided to turn around and try to go back into the house. At this point, his wife comes out of the house. She comes out belligerent and angry and saying the exact same story that her husband just gave. Ultimately, the defendant was asked to do a sobriety test at his house. Ultimately, he failed. Because he failed his sobriety test, he was arrested for driving under the influence and leaving the scene of an accident. Once at the police station, the defendant and his wife gave the exact same story, almost verbatim. The defendant, though, did finally tell some truth. He said that he did know the defendant. He finally admitted that they were co-workers and that they were ex-lovers. He also went on to say that he ended the relationship and that Miss Donna Kevins went crazy and was jealous and couldn't let it go. However, you'll hear evidence and you will be shown records that Donna Kevins actually ended the affair herself and that the defendant himself could not get over the fact that the relationship had ended. And it was the defendant himself who was harassing, stalking, and placing phone call after phone call to the victim. This is not a case of mistaken identity or a crazy ex-girlfriend. No, this is instead a story about how instead of pulling over, apologizing, and taking responsibility for his actions, the defendant went home, concocted a story with his wife, and decided to blame the victim. This case is just another example of how the defendant continues to harass and make Donna Kevin's life more difficult. At the end of this trial, I believe that you will have all the evidence, facts, and testimony that you need to conclusively find the defendant guilty of all charges against him. And I believe at the end of this trial, you will firmly believe in the saying that hell hath no fury like a man scorned. Thank you.
Good. Mr. Anderson, would you care to make an opening statement?
I would, Your Honor.
Excellent. Proceed.
Ladies and gentlemen, this fairy tale is filled with fantasy. For starters, I really wish we were over the fraud that hell hath no fury like a woman scorned, or the opposite for a man. This is a story of a betrayed wife and a man trying to make his marriage work. Let me just tell you the facts. Mr. Griffith is accused of 1 DUI and 1 hit and run, which are both alleged to have taken place on Saturday, October 5th of last year. Although this incident took place on a Saturday, we knew the day before, on Friday, October 4th. On Friday, Mr. Griffith got into a car accident in the parking lot where he works. He works at a high school. It happens. He pulled over, paid the other driver cash, settled the issue, and both went on their way. No hit and run on Friday is alleged. The next day, on Saturday, the date of this alleged incident, Mr. Griffith had a scheduled standing date night with his wife. These were scheduled standing date nights every single Saturday. You're going to learn that Mr. Griffith and Mrs. Griffith needed these scheduled standing date nights because they were having trouble. marriage trouble. So on Saturday, Mr. Grifford was at home. The only time he left the house was in the afternoon. In the afternoon, he went to the store, he got stuff for dinner, including alcohol, and he went home. He was home by about 4 p.m. The couple together made dinner. By about 5, they opened the alcohol and began to drink. They ate dinner, they watched movies together, they spent quality time together. Mr. Grifford did not drive intoxicated. He didn't drive anywhere. It was at this time, at about 10 p.m. on Saturday, that Mr. Grifford saw a police officer in his front yard feeling parts of his car. So he went outside in a bathrobe and with a martini and inquired. The officer told Mr. Grifford he was investigating a hit and run that occurred that night at 9 p.m. Mr. Grifford told the officer that he was involved in an accident the day before, but that day he had been home since 4 p.m. At this point, his wife came out, Mrs. Grifford. She completely independently told the officer that Mr. Grifford had been home since 4 p.m. Now, this is when Donna Kevins arrived, the alleged victim in this case. Driving a blue car, she screeched in and yelling and screaming obscenities, she charged at Mr. Grifford. She accused him, she hit him, and the officer had to forcefully place her in the backseat of his police cruiser against her will. Anyway, after Mr. Grifford failed 2 of 4 parts of the field sobriety test, Ms. Kevins was released and Mr. Grifford was arrested for DUI and hit and run, despite being home since 4 p.m. I want to take a step back here and tell the story of Donna Kevins. Both Mr. Grifford and both Mr. Grifford and Ms. Kevins are math teachers at the high school. Mrs. Grifford works there too. She's an administrative assistant. And last year, Mr. Grifford and Ms. Kevins began dating. They had an affair. You're going on a lot more, probably more than you want to know about Ms. Kevins and the real mistake Mr. Grifford made. Anyway, in late August, about 6 weeks before the Saturday incident, Mr. Grifford broke it off. He chose to work on his marriage with his wife. This is the problem, a man going back to his wife. Back to Saturday, October 5th. Ms. Kevins was probably hit by someone that night at 9 p.m. That person probably left. And at 9 p.m., she immediately called the police and reported the incident. Then, at 9:50, 50 minutes later, after considering the incident for nearly an hour and admitting to getting madder and madder, she called again. This time she said the person who hit her car was Mr. Grifford, and she said he did it intentionally. She gave the dispatch operator the Grifford's address, and the police officer arrived, as he should. The officer went to Mr. Grifford's house, and Mr. Grifford came out in a bathrobe with a martini. Anyway, at the police station, Mr. Grifford spoke freely with the police. He said he had not done what Ms. Kevins said he did. He told his same story. His wife, there to bail her husband out of jail, told her same story. He had been home since 4 p.m. Ladies and gentlemen, the evidence will show that Mr. Grifford was at home the whole time. He is not guilty of DUI because he was not driving, and he was not driving because he was at home with his wife. Additionally, he is not guilty of hit and run because he did not leave the scene of any accident, and he did not leave the scene of any accident because his accident occurred the day before. But Mr. Grifford did make a mistake. And that mistake was Ms. Kevins. Thank you.
All right. This is to both of you. Good job in that you gave your opening, but I felt this guy's guilty of sin, right? You give your opening, I'm like, wait a second. Whoa, wait a second. Maybe he's not. So in that respect, excellent job for both of you in that right now I'm ready.
Ready to happen.
Right? I thought you guys did a good job of countering each other. Vincent, again, excellent voice, excellent confidence. What I liked about this one, which you didn't seem to do so much in the last one, is I liked your choice of language, right? You talked about, how she was shaken, she was confused, and she composed herself, right? And the language you used left a picture more vividly than you did in your last one, right? And he's concocted this story, right? I love that, right? It leaves the impression that they made this up without you saying, oh, they were excited and they made this story up, right? Just that simple word, they concocted this. I really liked your choice of that. The theme, if you carry it through, great. It seems like you're going to be able to, and that you're talking about the harassing and the stalking. And if that evidence comes in and you're able to put that in, that's going to be a great thing to carry through. I like that you ended with how you started. You didn't end with the evidence will show he's guilty. Thank you. Right? You ended with the evidence to show, hell hath no fury. just like you opened. William, you did much the same thing. I would just caution you, and I know that it's hard like this, but this is what would happen in real court. He would give his opening, and as soon as he sits down, the judge may say, okay, you don't necessarily want to stand up first thing and challenge them, right? Make your statement be about yours, right? So when you first came up and you said, well, this fairy tale is, it kind of seemed like you were responding to what he said, okay? You don't want to come across that you're just defensive, right? You're already the defendant. You want it to seem like you're coming across defensive, responding to him. But you told your story in a very interesting and compelling way that made me think, well, wait a second, maybe there's more to this. And in that respect, that's exactly what you want to do. I didn't leave, when you sat down, I didn't leave thinking, this guy's guilty or not guilty. I left feeling like I need to hear the evidence of this because I have no idea if this guy's guilty or not. So I thought you did a very good job with that. Be careful with, I felt like maybe you were sharing too much. I know you want to address the bad parts, but it seemed like you were talking about always having marriage trouble at the bathroom martini. You said it a couple times, and, right? And he didn't talk about the bathroom martini, and I was like,
I didn't realize you were going to drop it.
I said something about the martini, but it's quick.
Yeah, it's so you were. I was hearing negative things. I guess if it's viewed negative for the first time coming from you, but kind of like our presenters talked about earlier, if you're going to end with, he made a mistake, his mistake was her, deliver on that, right? And if the evidence is going to come out that he was stalking her,
No, it's going to come out that she has histrionic personality disorder, and that she was leaving threatening messages in his car.
My point, that's a powerful close if you can deliver it, right? But be careful, especially in these he said, she said relationship type cases. You got any women on that jury?
Right.
Or are they going to identify with the victim? And that you just say, yeah, his only mistake was her. If you're not convinced you're going to be able to make them believe that, that may be a little bit too clever. Okay? But overall, I liked your tone, I liked your pace, the timing was good, and you stood up there with confidence, and you delivered your story. I thought that was a good job.
Much tighter than last week, it really was, it flowed very well. I would say this, if you're gonna mention, came outside in a martini in a bathrobe, tell me why that proves that he wasn't driving and getting in an accident a couple hours before. Completely oblivious to the fact that anyone would think that he was out driving just an hour before, because otherwise it's just martini in a bathrobe and you go, why are you telling us about this? I mean, it sounds a little weird, I get it, so you let the bad news out. But why not, if you think about it, why would somebody do that? It would only be if they were completely ignorant to thought that anybody would be pointing a finger at them and saying they did something wrong. Otherwise, you would think, well, you're just proving their case for them because you're drunk, drinking and walking out of your bathrobe like an idiot. But if you say, because it was completely oblivious to the kind of charges, and then she drives her car up and screams to a halt. What time did she get there? I forget what the facts are.
No, she didn't get there. She got there after the. They don't really say.
The police officer arrived at 10.
Yeah.
She called at 9:50. Police officer arrives at 10, and they kind of finished later.
She called at 9:50.
Police officer arrives at 10,
So
and then it just happened.
She's already put this in the hands of law enforcement, and now she actually shows up at his house and screeches her car, and they have to take her and put her into custody in his car. I mean, that's really important stuff to show she's a nutcase. She's a stalker kind of stuff. But because it's weird when you hear that, you go, she showed up there to his house?
That's exactly what I thought.
And also because they both, were fooling around, but they were both teaching at the school. How does she know where he lives? I mean, did she come over on the weekend when the weather's out of town? Those are all the weird things that were going through my head. Like, that's weird that she went to his house. So you could play that up and say, in a very strange move, she shows up at his house, which sort of proves that she's stalking him, right? If you think about it, you could certainly argue, she's been looking to, come in, break up this marriage and eventually, move in and whatever. But I think, man, it was so much tighter and put together. And I think you lost your place when you went back to the second time with the martini and robe, I think.
Yeah, I lost my place two or three times, 3 or 4 times.
Unfortunately, we're in a
it's not too obvious. I mean, you obviously saw.
Well, I got it, but I don't start at the end of the case and, move backwards into the opening statement. But I would say this, you definitely, from last week, improved structure-wise, flow-wise, tightened everything up. And that's the kind of thing, I mean, the two of you, I was trying to think, if these were like, new DA, new public defender, or new DA, new defense lawyer, whatever. Yeah, I mean, they're pretty close to what it would sound like in a courtroom. I mean, that's obviously not polished like a beautiful diamond, but on the other hand, perfectly acceptable. It's not like you were, blithering idiots running into the walls, and I mean, that's pretty amazing considering, with just a little bit.
That was as good or, better than what we've seen lawyers deliver.
Oh, yeah.
Hope not too high for it. I've seen worse.
From lawyers. You're missing the key part. And a 13th juror?
No, I think you both did a good job. I want to read the police report now. It's like, I need to know. You both, and that's a good thing. You kept me engaged, and you both did a great job.
Yeah. I'm not sure about the deodorants, but.
So I think we might next year do this again, have to do it 1 week and then have to do it again.
Mm-hmm.
Although we did sort of do it twice last week, didn't we? We didn't exactly.
No, we didn't.
We talked through it.
Yeah, we talked through it.
We talked through it, yeah.
So the question that I have is, or I guess the issue that I'm having is how do you pick which bad facts to use, which ones to leave out? Because listening to him, I mean, he did the complete opposite side. And so I don't want it to come off that I'm hiding it, but at the same time, I don't want like last week where I just did a rundown of all the facts because I'm scared that I'm going to hide something and the jury's going to be like, why didn't you say that? And now we have to hear it from him. How do you find a happy medium, or how do you determine?
Well, you have to decide how big it is, how big a fact is it, right? the fact that whether you talk about his bathroom or whatever, so what? That I found it odd. You mentioned it. Why are you bringing that up? That's not.
Well,
That's not a pro or a con.
It's like
just-
why he was arrested. I mean,
Right.
that's why I'm saying, like, it didn't matter what he did. When he came out of his bathroom, you're going to jail, sucker, you know, and that was all it took, you know?
Yeah, but it's a big deal if you're saying he's harassing her, he's stalking her. We all have had the impression like, well, why is she there then? Just call the police are gonna handle it, presumably. Why is she over there? And why does she end up in the back of a police car? You better deal with that, right? That's a big deal, that's something you wanna handle on your terms, right? She got over there, when she saw him, and she saw the smug look in his robe and his martini, oh, what happened? You know, and she knew he had just ran her off the road and flipped her off and drove off.
She immediately knew he was concocting a story. That's how you try to wind that together.
You know, and
And that's what got her.
she let her emotions get the best of her.
Yeah.
And you paint it how you want to paint it rather than letting him paint it. So it's really a matter of is it an important fact or not? Is this really going to hurt? Because this is a credibility case.
Yeah.
Right? I guess it's no question that there's car damage. Your guy saying the car damage happened to hit before on his car. He's drunk. He happened drinking martinis at home. So the issue is, was he out driving or not? What's going to undermine her credibility?
You know what else I was thinking too? And it just occurred to me. He wants you to believe that this guy gets in an accident in the school parking lot and the teacher has $500 in his pocket. Because that's what it was supposedly paid the person $500. It didn't exactly. It was a woman, blonde.
Right.
You know, I mean, it occurs to me that you would think teachers carrying around $5 here. I don't know.
There's a couple of facts that I left out that are bad also, for example, he was driving on a suspended license, and I would have said that's the reason expired license.
Yeah.
And I would have said that's the reason that he left. That he was stalking her and screwing around, and he's like, F
Gotta
this,
get out of there.
you know?
Right.
Because now he's drunk with a suspended license, having hit somebody who's like, it piles and then, and he flees. It kind of like falls into that, flight like kind of mode, you know?
But you don't want to admit that he's driving either.
Well, no, I'm not gonna admit it.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just saying that, like, how would you approach, because it's gonna suck when that pops up, you know?
It is.
Well, is he
And-
charged with that?
No.
Well,
Then it
No.
might not pop up.
okay.
If he's charged with it, it's gonna come in for sure.
Right, but just.
If he's not charged with it, you got a DUI, you got a hit and run. I don't think judges let in, it just expired license, not suspended.
Just expired, yeah.
So you do a 402.
1 month before too. Like,
You do a
before
402 hearing and say,
I think it was
this is not relevant to anything.
No, I think you're off with dates, because I scratched out, this incident took place last year, not 2 years ago. So the thing is, this incident took place 13 months before.
It's confusing with the current year minus how many ever years that they give and stuff like that.
So
So
you can use this every year.
yeah.
That's-
No, I get that's how they do it. It's just
Yeah,
There's another one that this may be going too far, but if he's willing to cheat on his wife, he's willing to lie to a cop. Those are the kinds of things that sometimes you put those together.
Well, it's like, this is something you want like a juror to pick up. I just hint that, right?
Yeah.
Because you don't want to like say that. I mean, you could look like, well, I guess you could. I don't know. What do you
Well,
think?
you-
well, that's what I was gonna say
You
for the
could say-
doctor's note is she
She was
literally
cheating on-
stole it.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't want to bring in the doctor's note because I don't want that to even come out. So
But there's a lot of stuff in there, and you can take all that stuff and twist it around. And if you've got a bad fact that's really bad, you better bring it out. Because otherwise it looks like you're hiding and you don't want to do that. So that there is no happy medium. It depends on every case. They're different.
sure.
But the ultimate horrible bad facts, you probably need to figure out a way. I was thinking you have to try and figure out a way to turn the bad fact around to something that actually explains your theme of the case. It takes a while to do that kind of thing. But both of you really restructured everything and made it was a lot more consistent with what you would hear new lawyers in court do. It really was. And that's fantastic, because I mean, let's face it, guys. Even new lawyers usually have gone through a couple of cases, and you're there. I mean, you could walk into court today and do this opening statements, and you wouldn't be looking like there's a guy that just came out of the law school, you know.
Yeah, and probably, for me, probably the biggest compliment I'll give you guys on this last one was I was interested.
Yeah.
I'm curious. Now you've got me, right? And it was both of you that did it. I'm like, I want to hear. Okay, call your first witness. I'm into the case now.
Right.
Okay, where, you know, if you don't have, kind of like Judge Shirley said, if you don't have that energy, or if you don't hook them, like,
I think you both had energy, that's a good point.
yeah.
Both of you had good energy.
So you set it up nicely. I thought he was guilty. I didn't think he was guilty. And so, in that job, that was just good.
Gotta hear this case. Yeah. Just what you want. So next week we'll come back and,
We'll go over the book materials.
Go over the book
We'll
materials.
see it between now and then. We can get the,
Case file.
get the case files.
I'm not quite sure what's going on. There's some confusion between homicide and our principal there. You know, whatever happens, we should do that case anyway.
Yeah, if we have a copy of it, we can do it.
If I have to, if it doesn't work out with homicide, I'll just get the kids from Xavier or Palm Desert or whatever. Because they're all doing the same grade.
And I'm sure they would love to practice.
Yeah, scrimmage. So. All right, you guys, good job.
So we're just reading next week. We're not actually compiling cross-examination questions and stuff like that.
Correct. And if we get the materials, we will email them to you and start assigning stuff for following weeks.
So when we do the cross and stuff like that, is that going to be off the case file, or is it going to be off the case book?
Oh, boy.
It'll be off the book. If we don't have the case materials and we don't have the people to work with, we'll just stay dealing with the book.
All right, thanks for listening.
All righty. Thank you. Thanks, David.
Where are we going? Let's go this way.
All right.